Welcome to the NCO Journal Podcast. This is a podcast series where we discuss published articles with authors and provide a forum for the open exchange of ideas, information, and solutions. I'm your host, Staff Sergeant Brandon Cox, Senior Editor of the NCO Journal. With us is Chago Zapata, the Managing Editor, and Sergeant First Class Osvaldo Akite, the NCOIC. Today we discuss the article, Regaining Relevance Through Effective Writing, by Sergeant Major David G. Sear, an instructor at the Sergeant Major's Academy. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to have a conversation with you guys today about my article.
Before we kick things off, Sergeant Major, can you please tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Dave Sear, and I'm originally from El Paso, Texas. Been in the Army for about 25 years now. I'm completing my second year instructing here at the Sergeant's Major Academy. I started out in the distance learning department where I taught Army operations, and then I moved into the residence course, and now I'm teaching force management. Currently about to end class 74 here, so we're super excited to start welcoming in the next iteration of students that are going to be taking the writing journey with us, and hopefully we can find some more students in this new pool of class 75 students to put some good articles out there into the NCO Journal and some of the other available publications that are out there. We're also getting another 69 international students this year, and I know we were publishing international work as well, so hopefully we can keep that ball rolling too.
Sergeant Major, can you tell us what gave you the inspiration to write this article?
So I think, as students get into the academy and they start exploring their writing journey and they start improving, a lot of them seek out writing opportunities, some for extrinsic purposes because they want to pursue some type of accolades or awards, but then some just find the passion to write and they want to write things. But they usually just start by not knowing what to write about, and they take their scholarly work that they've done for the academy and submit that to publish. And the question that I get asked most often is, I don't know what to write. I wouldn't know where to start, and I don't know what people want to hear from me. So I kind of, started putting together this list of barriers that I saw my students especially coming up with, just excuses or reasons that they didn't want to write, or they were either too busy or weren't sure where to start. So I just wanted to put something down and let them know that you can overcome this.
Before we dive into the barriers of writing, I think it's important that we discuss why it is so important that we as NCOs pass down information and write. What are your thoughts on that, Sergeant Major?
Sure. I mean, just varying levels of experience from NCOs throughout the spectrum of the ranks, from our junior NCOs up to the most senior. But if we don't write it down and leave it behind, when we leave our service, whether that's after our first enlistment, second enlistment, or we stay for retirement and beyond, if we take that information with us, it's a lot like taking all your savings account with you to the grave. Nobody's going to be able to benefit from that. So I think if we put our experiences, more importantly, I think our lessons learned, the times that we got things wrong and we learned something from it, if we can put that stuff down into writing, later on somebody might be able to read that and avoid making the same mistakes or having to go through the same trials and tribulations that we went through.
Yeah, we just went through 20 years of COIN operation, of counterinsurgency operations. And all that base of experience is retired. Like Sergeant Akite, our Sergeant Akite here, our NCOIC is going to be retiring in August. That base of experience will be gone. Those stories, the lessons learned, all the things that if they don't write it down in a way that gets it available out there to everyone, then it's going to be gone. And as an NCO, you have an opportunity here to leave your legacy behind, to help those who are coming up, to the new NCOs who are taking your place, who don't have the opportunity to learn those lessons.
Yeah, I agree totally with that. It's almost like having a plan on the shelf that's a little bit dusty, but in case of emergency, you can grab it off the shelf and dust it off and open it up. I mean, as we transition out of COIN and into LISCO, into large scale combat operations, because that's the most predictive next avenue. We really don't know, though. We may go back into COIN at some point, and in many aspects, we are still engaged in that. So it's important that as the old guys retire, that we do put those dusty plans on the shelf in case of emergency, so we can pull them off.
Now, We do this a lot of the times through many different ways. We were just talking a little bit before the podcast, and one of the things we started here, we found out that our new soldier has never seen a war movie, and she joined the Army without having seen anything about the Army, kind of thing. And so we were just kind of in shock, and so we decided, hey, why don't we just play, like, we started with Band of Brothers, Curahee, first episode, but we use that as a platform to jump off into different discussions on leadership, on fraternization, and various different Army topics. I guess my point is that we use that as a medium to kind of have these conversations, and we do that in various ways. I remember we would have, we'd be talking around, gathering coffee back in my old units, and we'd talk story. We talk about these things, but it brought up a question for me, and I'll shoot this to you, Sergeant Major, is that we do this in many different ways, and there's many different avenues to share these lessons learned. But what is it about writing that makes it stand out above all these other mediums?
Well, for me, one of the main points that makes writing stand out is that I think, personally, I need to practice what I preach. Here in the classroom every day, I'm encouraging my students to publish, to write something beyond just the classroom, to put their thoughts down. And with that, they're also submitting several written assessments that I'm grading and providing them feedback, and I'm seeing their writing progress. But if they don't see that I'm willing to do the same thing, I don't know that they're going to be able to see the same perceived value in it. My previous article that I published back in 2022 with you guys, I have it printed out, framed on the wall here in my office, so that everybody comes in, they see that, okay, he's telling us to publish something, and he's doing it himself. And I think that's really important. It's not just about writing, right? If you can apply that same mindset to H2F, to physical readiness, to mental readiness, to spiritual readiness. If you're not bought into something, if you're not engaged in the same thing that you're telling others to do, then it tends to lose a little bit of credibility. So for me, I love writing. That's part of my passion, and my intrinsic motivation is certainly sparked when I see something that I wrote get accepted and published. But then also I have that extrinsic motivation too, to see others find benefit in what I'm doing.
One of the things I love about writing is the impact and reach that it has. I was talking about some of the stories that we talk about here in our office. It's only impacting Sergeant Cox, Chago, PFC Ortega. Like, that's it, right? And so when I think about writing, I'm thinking that story can have impact across hundreds of NCOs, and those NCOs can talk to other, soldiers and things like that. Thousands. So writing has such an impact that it can reach bigger audiences, and a lot of times over time as well, right? So like we're talking about, we were reading some of the articles from the NCO Journal's review. These are articles that are written 10 years ago or maybe even a couple years ago. We're reading as if we're getting the article fresh from those soldiers back in that time, but they're still having impact and have relevance today. So I think that's what I love about writing, from my point of view, is that you can reach a vast number of people that you aren't able to do so with just speaking, and then you can do that across time.
Yeah, I think that there is value in trying to find, or maybe quantify the amount of people that you're impacting. But I've also always said that if my efforts, if what I do only helps or impacts or benefits one single person, then I personally see that as a success. If only one person finds something that I've written helpful, then I think that that's a success from my point of view.
When we put together the 30th anniversary of the NCO Journal, we dug up articles starting from the first edition of the NCO Journal, which was in 1991. And the things that we found are still relevant today. And we're still, we read, I remember reading them, and it's like, man, this is amazing stuff. And the fact that you could write something today, you, Sergeant Major Sear, could write something today that somebody 30 years down the road or 50 years down the road could read it and say, they could still get something out of that. I think that reaches down to the the words that I used before, which was about leaving a legacy. This is an opportunity for you using the written word to leave a legacy where that can reach NCOs way down the line. And I think that's another important point of one of the most important reasons to write is that because of the impact that you'll have on the Army, not just now but in the future.
Oh, I agree, 100%.
Sergeant Major, you talked a little bit about why writing is important. Can you tell us some of those barriers that you hear from your students when you ask them to write?
Yeah, sure. So, the first one that I kind of already talked about a little bit is just not knowing what to write. They feel like their topic may have already been kind of beat up or written too much, or they also fear that their article might not get accepted and then they don't see the value in it. So I think probably the one that stands out the most is just not thinking that their written efforts were good enough. I'm not a good writer, therefore it's not going to be published somewhere. And I think a lot of the tips or the advice that I wrote in my article about overcoming the risk for rejection, the fear of rejection, or finding somebody else to work with. Some of those things just get after the barriers that are, I don't think I'm a good enough writer, or I don't know what to write in the first place.
I'll tell you, when I first got here, Sergeant Major, I never thought that I would write anything. And I think that barrier that I had, that excuse, which would be, and it's hard to write, or I don't know what to write about, or nobody will care, right? Well, that was all taken away when my boss told me that I had to write something if I was going to be an editor at the NCO Journal. So I did, and I asked him, well, how do I figure out where to start, right? And he just told me, write about what you care about, write about what you know, write about what you're passionate about. And then I was like, well, what do I know about, And it could either be a story or something like that. So I went through that whole path of what I could create. And then I decided on, there was a team that I had kind of grown up in the Army with when I was very young in my career. And they gave me that support structure. They get, all that formative experience. So I kind of just wrote about that because, I know all those guys and I thought that that'd be cool. And then it ultimately turned out to ended up being all about team building, which was an Army thing. So I was like, well, this is perfect. I could just write about this. But that's kind of how that all came to fruition. But that was one of my first experiences writing something. And I actually liked that, I guess, time where I felt like I was thinking rapidly. I had all these great thoughts about I should put this in the story and I should put that in the story. And I was kind of engulfed in it. I think that that's kind of that high that people get from writing. I think that that's interesting. Maybe not a lot of people know that.
Yeah, I think some of the best products that I see here as an instructor at the Academy are the ones that are the result of a group project or a group effort. My students have to participate in a staff study where they attempt to solve a problem for the Army. And some of the best and most creative ideas and solutions come out of that group collaborative effort. I think working together, especially if it's somebody you might have a conflicting point of view with, and you guys are able to engage in actual discourse and get some of that debate out of the way up front. If you're writing something that can be argued against, then once it goes to publication, you tend to see a lot of negative feedback immediately, right? But if you're able to work with somebody and get those opposing point of views out of the way, you build a team, and ultimately, I think you can put together a better product.
I was just thinking about, to be an effective writer, you need to be a good reader, really good reader. And so I was just thinking about it, and as I hear you guys talking about this and collaborating is the best way to get ideas, looking at different viewpoints, I immediately thought about, well, that's what you do if you don't have a team that can support you, kind of like what we did with Sergeant Cox, and we give them different ideas. Go read different viewpoints, read what others have already put down on paper about what's going, what problems they faced or what solutions they've given. And that could be a collaborative work piece. And so I was just thinking, reading is such a key aspect of writing, especially when you talk about if you don't know what to write about, if you read something, you're going to agree or disagree with something. And so as more and more you read, you can put ideas together and you can kind of say, hey, you know what? I don't agree with that. And here's why. and or here's a different solution that I see. And so, because everybody sees it from their own point of view, so maybe you can give us your thoughts on reading, Sergeant Major.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like I wrote, reading is absolutely fundamental, right? I mean, I think just being able to figure out what is out there already, so that your idea can be unique. If you're, first of all, if you don't know what else is published, then you may just risk publishing or writing something that has already been written by 15, 20 other people in the last year that is just going to be rejected at every turn. So that, I think it starts right there. But something I think is really important to note here is that reading doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion, sitting down and opening an article and putting your eyes on it. There's a lot of audio options out there that are going to help you read some of these things. I listen to you guys in the truck. I listen to your podcast. And all of your articles are available in audio format as well. So I'm able to listen to a relatively easy to understand person reading these articles to me. And I can do that while I'm driving or while I'm tending to the yard or cleaning my pool. I can have my headphones in and listen to some of these articles, and it helps me multitask at the same time. But then it helps me get through that reading aspect of just understanding what else is out there, so that when I sit down and start writing, I'm either confident that what I'm writing is unique, or I'm providing an opposing view to something that I read. And I think that's something that we're missing out on too.
I think another point about reading too, it's like me, I'm a voracious reader of like fantasy, science fiction, historical fiction, that kind of thing. The more you read, not just the kind of things that we publish, but anything, I think the more that your vocabulary expands, the more your mind expands, the more you're able to write clearly and efficiently on things that interest you or that are important to your career. So I think it's important to read, I would say, anything.
One of the other things that we're charged with as an NCO is to be effective communicators. And I don't think there's a better way to become a more effective communicator than to being an effective writer. And the reason for that, and here are my reasons for it, is that when you write, you can get your ideas down in a logical progression, or you can at least get them down in a way that you want to express them. And it's kind of like a building block. So, when I write, I'm thinking about the ideas that I'm trying to put down on paper. I just put them down, and then I kind of go back and I organize them into a way that makes sense from somebody that's never heard something like that. And that's what makes me a good writer. But then I've found that as more I practice that, I'm able to formulate my ideas a little bit better and communicate them when I'm speaking. And so I think reading, writing are key builders to being an effective communicator, and which is something that I need to build on as not only as an Army profession, but as I leave the Army, I'm looking to build those things up.
Yeah, if nothing else, from a professional development or career-long learning aspect, I think we've all received emails in the past where, the message was missed in the email because of poor wording or bad use of vocabulary, or, just hard to understand the email. Therefore, the message or the guidance or the mission just wasn't clear. And then, things fail. And why did it fail? Well, because Sergeant Major Sears sent me an email that said the exact opposite of what he intended. So if anything, from a professional development perspective, practicing writing, letting somebody else get eyes on it and help you through the editing process, not being offended when somebody tells you that some of the things that you're writing aren't accurate, or some of the vocabulary you're using is off, and things of that nature. Just being open to learning how to write is going to make you a more effective leader or soldier, because if you have to put out your message through the written form, it's going to be more easily understood.
Sergeant Major, I think this is a great time for a good segue, because you wrote an outstanding article about, regaining relevance of writing and reading. And I think that's a good point to kind of switch up the topic a little bit to the two new Army programs that are coming out, the Muddy Boots Forum and the Harding Project. So if I could get a little overview from Chago about the Harding Project and kind of what that means, and then we'll move on to the Muddy Boots.
I'm familiar with the Muddy Boots program. Let me get with that first. The Muddy Boots program is an initiative from Sergeant Major of the Army, who he's tasking nominative CSMs out there to write articles and to pick articles as well that they think are important, and to write about a subject, and then provide prompts for NCOs or for soldiers to use to write their own response to their article, or response to the article that they chose that they think is important, or as prompts for them to write things on the subject themselves. So it's a good way for the Sergeant Major of the Army to get the NCOs, the senior NCOs in the Army out there to write, to set an example, and to get soldiers writing about the things that we're talking about right now, about the importance of reading and writing, the importance of communicating. He's got it right. The better communicator you are, the better NCO you are. All this got started because of the Chief of Staff of the Army, his initiative to start the Harding Project.
Yeah, it's basically the Harding Project is just renewing professional military writing, and that's through the different publications that we already have with the different journals out there, different professional publications, and then with us, with the Army's University Press's Military Review, the NCO Journal. So I think it kind of ties back into what Sergeant Major Sear had said in the beginning, as to why is writing so important, and I think the CSA has made that a priority because it is so important.
Yeah, I think the Harding Project is a great initiative. The chief talked about some changes that are coming through. One of the most important things I think they're doing is they're modernizing the way that some of our professional bulletins are delivering their products. In his article, he talks about the infantry and engineer magazines or journals going straight to a web first instead of a print, and that's something you guys changed to not so long ago as well. And then removing some of the barriers to being able to access some of these professional bulletins and putting them beyond, in front of the firewall instead of behind the firewall, so soldiers don't have to log in with a common access card to be able to access some of these products. I think that's a great initiative. I also think that the modernization of it is going to really help us in professional military education. Our students are coming through writing for some of the first time. They graduated high school in some cases 20 years ago, and they haven't gone to college in some cases, so they've never written. So doing some of these things is going to force them, if they're able to participate in this Muddy Boots, it's going to force them to learn how to cite properly and get some of the experience that they need to be successful as the PMEs at all levels continue to kind of increase the rigor in terms of writing requirements.
Well, I think it goes back to what you were talking about earlier when you were talking about, having your students come in and you kind of showing them that you walk that walk, that you write, and that you even post it in your classroom, so that they see that this is important, and he's also done it, so he's not just asking us. It really shows that leadership to follow that example. So I think that having the nominative sergeant majors write something, put it out there, say, hey, this is important, that I want the force to learn about, read about, and then having the soldiers kind of like, having them try to write a response to that, I think is an interesting way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then every quarter having those division CSMs publish 5 articles and then highlight something out of the archives to bring back to the table, like you were talking about earlier, to pull something out of the archives and reinvigorate it, to bring it back into the conversation that's still relevant and why they selected that article. I think it really 100% links into what you're talking about. Walking that walk, showing the soldiers in that formation that it's not just about you writing, it's about us writing, it's about everybody writing. And when it starts with that division CSM and they're positive about it and they're participating in that, I think that it's going to have a really good impact on the force.
Now, you just mentioned something, Sergeant Major, that and you regularly talk with senior NCOs, right? But what would you say for that junior NCO, just pinned on stripes? What would you say to them about the importance of writing, and then encouraging them to write?
Being old doesn't mean you have experience. Somebody that's been in the Army for a few years and has gone through the junior ranks and they're pinning on sergeant for the first time. That doesn't mean they don't have experience either, right? So their experience is that of something that's appropriate to their rank level, and it still needs to be shared. I think the NCO Journal and other forums, other professional bulletins are not just accessible to NCOs, and junior soldiers probably want to read things that apply to them. So I think that newly pinned sergeant talking about their successes, how they got there, the mentorship, how did I get here, what worked for me, what didn't work for me, and kind of leaving that legacy behind as they continue to grow at each level. Because honestly, guys, if I look back to what got me from E1 to E5 and I try to write about it right now, I'm not sure that I could anymore. It's been so long ago. But if I would have written something back when I was in E5, E6 about my successes and failures back then I would have been able to leave that legacy behind. But now I fear that I just can't recall what it was that got me successful to that level.
You know, this is what I'm about to say. I think is aimed more for the senior NCOs here. Imagine if you, back when you just pinned on those three stripes, you know, you just put on sergeant or pinned on sergeant. Imagine if your sergeant major or master sergeant, whoever, one of your senior NCOs said, "I need you to write this or do this, or write this article, or not article, but write this paper for me," and then continue doing it and develop your writing skills. How much easier that would have been for you as a senior NCO if somebody had encouraged you to develop those skills early on in your career. Even if it's only minimal, you know, it's like you're a little more prepared once you get to the Sergeant Major Academy, for example, and or some other school, and you have to write, and you've already kind of been there. You've already trod that road. You've already written a little bit of something, and you know what it takes. So, you know, take that as a lesson for you senior NCOs. You know, challenge your young soldiers out there to write. To maybe if they don't get published, but at least, you know, try. But if you get them writing now, they're going to thank you for it later. Maybe not right now. They're gonna whine because, you know, that's what the young ones do. That's what we all did. You know, it's like you're going to complain and say, "No, I don't want to kick and scream or whatever." But in the long run, they're going to thank you because it's going to be something that'll help them develop, not just as future NCOs, but on a personal level as well.
Yeah, I think a good example of that paper you're talking about is a white paper, you know, and senior NCOs at all levels, that especially, well, the ones that come here to the academy, the ones that have written a white paper before are few and far in between. So if we start, you know, soldiers have solutions to problems, and that's what the white paper is all about, solving problems. So if we you know, instead of just allowing them to you know, kind of vent about the issues or throw them in a certain, encourage our soldiers to write down what the problem is and write their solutions down so that, you know, our brigade commanders can start championing those white papers for them up and start seeing real positive change in the Army. And honestly, a white paper is a really easy place to start. It's a lot less rigorous in terms of formatting and things of that nature, and will really allow, especially junior soldiers, to start, you know, kind of getting their experience in terms of writing.
Thank you, Sergeant Major, for joining us, and a thank you to our audience. Remember to put your knowledge to the page, submit articles, and get published with the NCO Journal. Don't forget to check our webpage and follow us on social media. We'll catch you next time on the NCO Journal Podcast.